Get the stick. Rawr, ferocious. Ferocious cat. Alright. Let's take a thumbnail. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Gwen. Good girl. Good girl. Hey booktubers, it's the Hufflepuffle here, and today I'm going to be talking about my March wrap-up and my April TBR. I finally read enough books in 1 month to do a wrap-up and a TBR, and so I figured I'd do one featuring Kat. Let's start with books that I read in March, and then we'll talk about the books that I want to read for April. So the first book that I read in March was Hex Hall by Rachel Hawkins, but I read this book originally in 2014, right around when I started my channel, which was almost exactly 6 years ago, by the way. My anniversary was on April 2nd, but I started this book and I read it right around when I started BookTube. I got the recommendation from some booktuber, I can't remember who. So I decided to order the second two that I had read previously on a long dead e-reader. And I have now physical copies of the whole trilogy, and I reread all 3 of them in March, and I love them just as much, if not more, than I did when I was 14. I just appreciate them so much. These books are incredible. They're incredibly well written, really funny. You should definitely pick up the Hex Hall trilogy by Rachel Hawkins. I rated this 5 stars for the second time because it was just as good as I remembered it. This is one of those younger me reads that holds to the test of time. The next 2 books that I read in March were Demon Glass and Spellbound by Rachel Hawkins, so the second and third book in the Hex Hall trilogy. Both of these were 5 stars. Same trilogy, same situation as Hex Hall rereads because I loved them so much when I was younger, so I wanted to reread them. And honestly, rereading this trilogy is what made me want to read more this month. And I actually, got back into reading after almost like 6 months of having not finished a book. The next book that I read in March was Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier. This is a middle grade graphic novel that follows the main character whose sister has cystic fibrosis, and they have to move to this town that has lots of ghosts. And it's kind of about coming to terms with the inevitability of death. It's a really sweet story. I devoured it in one sitting, as I do with all of Raina Telgemeier's graphic novels. I highly recommend all of them. I've been reading them since I was the target age demographic for Raina's books, and I love them, so I highly recommend that you check them out, especially Ghosts. I don't know if it's my favorite of her work, but it was still a 5-star, really sweet read that I really enjoyed. The next book that I read in March was A Song of Wraiths and Ruins by Roseanne A. Brown, which was a e-arc that I received from my job. It was honestly such a good book. I highly recommend it. It was definitely like one of those books that was like solid at the beginning, and then the last 70 pages bumped it to like 8 stars. Like, I was like, this is the best thing. It has such a setup in the beginning, which is good and important and great, but I thought I knew where that setup was going, and I would have been fine if it went there because it was set up. And it did go there, like the setup paid off, but it was in such a way that was so unexpected and not predictable that it was like the perfect marriage of a good plot twist that you don't see coming, but is still set up and pays off the setup from the beginning of the book. So it's not completely out of nowhere, but it's also unexpected and not predictable. It was incredible. The world building is great, the characters are wonderful. I really loved this fantasy. And the last book that I read in March was Break Your Glass Slippers by Amanda Lovelace. This is a poetry collection, and it's kind of based around Cinderella and, the reality of fairy tale narratives. Plus, kind of just has really good messages of loving yourself and the importance of self-love and the importance of recognizing that your worth is beyond who loves you. Yeah, so those are all of the books I read in March, and they were all really good books. I think pretty much all 5-star reads, though that's not surprising for me. So a lot of people may notice that I rate most of the books I read 5 or 4 stars. I hardly ever rate anything 3 or below stars, and people might think that that makes me dishonest because I rate so many books so positively, but really, the truth is that I don't finish books that are gonna be 3 or less stars. I have such a hard time focusing on reading as it is. My brain is constantly firing, looking for distractions, and I find it so hard to focus on words that I love. I cannot focus on words that I don't love. Any book I wouldn't rate highly, I don't finish, and therefore I don't rate. Without further ado, let's get into my April TBR. So for my April TBR, there's a couple books that I want to get to this month. The first book is what I'm currently reading, which is House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess. This is an ARC that I received again through work, and I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple of days. The next book that I want to read this month is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I just received an ARC of this as I'm on the street team for Cemetery Boys, and I'm going to read that next because I'm dying to read this book. I also really want to read Ghost Squad by Claribel Ortega this month. This book comes out on Tuesday, and I am so excited for it. I've been anticipating it since it was announced, and it's finally coming out. I'm finally going to have it, so I really want to read it this month. And the last book that I want to read this month is Check Please, which is a graphic novel that I am currently working my way through. I'm kind of most of the way through it. I'm reading it when I don't feel like reading words. And that's it. That's my March wrap-up and my April TBR. Let me know if you've read any of these books or what your April TBR is and what books you might have read in March. And I will see you guys in my next video. No mourners, no funerals.